Well, guys, back to another lecture in our How Colors Work in Game and Level Design section. So for the next few lectures, we're going to be looking at color as an identifier, so identifiers in video games and game design. Why this is extremely important. I know it's going to seem very redundant, as in obviously I knew this is how it works, duh. But actually, I'm going to explain to you the theory that's behind this. So without further ado, let's talk about what an identifier is, so the definition, and how it's used in design. And then later on in the different lectures that I'm going to be doing, we'll talk about 2 or 3 different types of identifiers. We're also going to talk about color layouts, the glyphs, and basically how this all ties in together into an effective game design and level design. So, the definition of a color identifier. This is basically the grouping or separation of game elements to clearly define important mechanics. So I'm going to repeat this. It's the grouping or separating of game elements to clearly define important mechanics using color. And how is it used? Well, the use of identifiers in games is no new practice. This has been done since the beginning of time, before they even understood real color theory and color psychology. And so basically the main thing is sometimes a red shirt can mean multiple things in a game. It could mean someone bleeding. It could mean Santa Claus. It could mean blood moon, like a foreshadowing, ominous presence. It could mean Chinese New Year, red as in like the symbol of, let's say, a pig, New Year pig, whatever. So red could have multiple meanings. Red shirts could have multiple meanings in general, but at other times, just a red shirt, like our favorite red shirt guy, who stumped half of the WoW development panel back at BlizzCon a couple of years ago. And the use of these color indicators is just to recognize an object just by its color. So the tokens in Sorry have no special abilities between the colors, and they just mark which each player is playing. And they serve as the bond between the objective and the mechanics. So sometimes you don't really have to have a color as a mechanic. You don't have to make it so that if you play red you have an extra power, or if you play blue you're at a disadvantage. No, sometimes just an identifier is just to assign rules and mechanics to a color, and it just makes it easier for the players to distinguish themselves amongst other players as well. See, rulebooks, tutorials, etc. must be established to clearly explain how these object connects to the rules, and it is extremely important to deliver a concise representation of how the colors are represented. So when we talk about color as an identifier, we have to make sure that we basically outline all to the player that's using these colors in the mechanics and in the rules, what each one does specifically, and how it relates to them enjoying the game properly. So like I said, sometimes colors could just be colors, but if you want to assign specifics, so if, like I said, red had like a buff, then you got to make sure that's explicit in the rule book, so that it's understood by the player that not only is this character red, but he also has this type of ability associated with it. And then if, let's say, they play blue, then they're at a disadvantage because of X and X reasons. So in design, color identifiers are used for grouping and separating key game elements connecting to the player. They're used as identifiers for certain mechanics and rules, and they should always be clearly laid out. And that's it, guys, for this little lecture in our intro to these color identifiers and glyphs and neutrals, and I'll see you guys in the next one.